Hello and welcome to the New Books Network Jewish Studies channel. I am your host, Drora Arusi, Executive Director of Jewish Unity Through Diversity Institute, where we explore the future of our heritage. Today, we're really delighted to speak with Anastasios Karababas, and I apologize if I'm corrupting the name, and his book, In the Footsteps of the Jews of Greece from Ancient Times to the Present Day, translated by Lena M. Liederman, published by Valentine Mitchell in 2024. So welcome, Mr. Karababas. Please, I should have asked this before, but am I pronouncing your name correctly or?
It's Karababas.
Karababas. All right, thank you. Greek is definitely not my first or 10th language. So thank you for joining us here today. And I'm going to ask you first to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of a background, just who you are.
So I'm French and Greek historian, columnist, and political analyst. I studied in Paris, history, geography, and political science. I was a professor in France during 16 years. And as the same time as teaching, I was lecturer and researcher at the Shoah Memorial of Paris, where I focused on the extermination of Jews in Europe. I published two books. In French, the first one, the Shoah, the Holocaust, the obsession of the anti-Semitism. It's the history of the anti-Semitism since Middle Ages. And the second one, In the Footsteps of the Jews of Greece, in Greek, French, and English. Now I live in Athens, where I am a political analyst and columnist, and I work for newspapers, radios, and TV channels.
So before we even get into this, I missed that part. You worked at the Shoah Memorial in Paris, so you saw lately what happened there. Is it cleaned up at this point?
Now, yes, fortunately, but it's difficult nowadays to face this situation, and the anti-Semitism in France is very violent. It's very sad.
Yeah, I know, a little bit off topic, but it comes with who you are and your background. So let's go into the book a little bit. Tell us where you were when you decided that you wanted to write this book, how you became involved in the Jews of Greece. You just gave us a whole background in Paris. So what made you become involved in the history of the Jews of Greece?
Unfortunately, it's a forgotten history in Greece, but also in Europe. We don't know nothing about the history of the Jews of Greece. It's the oldest Jewish community in Europe. It's more than 2,500 years of history. So it was very important for me because it's my destiny, my roots. So it was very important, my heritage, yeah. It was very important for me to show that the Greek Jewish community is very diverse, very dynamic, was before the Holocaust, of course, and the oldest Jewish community. And my point is that it's important to show this history and to write a book that would be accessible for a wide audience and easy to read. So it was important for me to present the entire history of the Jews of Greece from the antiquity to the present day, and focused especially, of course, on the Holocaust.
Right. We'll get into that in a moment, but let's go. You put it in chronological. Let's talk a little chronologically. So one of the oldest sources you mentioned is the Book of Maccabees. And then also, of course, Philo of Alexandria and the Sermon of the Apostle Paul in Greece. Can you give us an insight into the types of sources that you used for the book and how you found them?
As for the sources, the work was indeed very lengthy, and the bibliography in my book is very extensive.
Yes.
You mentioned that. For the Jewish presence in the Mediterranean Sea, the most comprehensive book is the Book of Maccabees, 2nd century before Common Era. It presents the Greek domination in Eastern Mediterranean Sea and provides a clear information about the Jews of Greece.
And what era are we talking about approximately? What years?
The 2nd century before Common Era.
Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. As for Greece, especially, who came to spread the word of Jesus and to spread to the Jews and to the pagans the word of Jesus? The Apostle Paul. So we have also the book of Apostle Paul, first century after Christ. He recounts, for example, his journey in Greece and speaks extensively to the Jews. So we know that we have a lot of Jewish communities during the first century after Christ in Greece, thanks to Apostle Paul. A lot of books, for example, from the Jewish community of Greece. In Greece, before the Second World War, we have more than 30 Jewish communities. Some of them have a lot of archives. So, for example, in Athens, in Thessaloniki, in Volos, Volos is the center of Greece, in Thessaly, they made their own research of these communities. So we have Apostle Paul, we have the book of Maccabees, we have Benjamin of Tudela during Middle Ages, this rabbi and Jewish traveler from Spain.
Right, a few hundred years difference between them, but
yeah, but it's all the history of the Jews of Greece from the antiquity to the present day. So we have sources. For example, for the antiquity, we have sources for the Middle Ages, we have sources, modern sources after the Second World War. But in Greece, I have to say that our sources are very poor. We don't have a lot of works, a lot of books about the Jews of Greece. And the research about the Jews of Greece and about the Holocaust began after 1990. It's 40 years of bibliography. Before that, in Greece, it was a hidden subject.
But there are many manuscripts, from what I'm understanding from you. So you could go back to the manuscripts. There was the information, just nobody compiled it.
Yeah, the most difficult thing for me was to gather all the sources and to choose the right sources, because we have also a lot of mistakes in Greece about the numbers of deportation, for example. We don't have clear numbers, clear situation about that. So it was important for me to find the right sources. Yes, and also it was difficult for me to find Holocaust survivors, because you have in my book a lot of testimonies from Holocaust survivors. It was difficult to find survivors willing or still able to speak about that, because they are too old now.
Thank you. So let's talk about who these Greek Jews are. Okay, you talked about those that were there in the time of Benjamin of Tudela and even back to the Apostle Paul. I mean, we're talking about millennia of Jews in Greece. The question is, you talk about different communities there. So you have the Romaniot, but then there were different waves. So introduce us a little bit to who was there. We're talking pre-Holocaust. We'll do pre and post-Holocaust. So
yeah, of course. So for me, this research was very difficult to organize, and my research began in 2011, and the book was published in Greek in 2022. More than 11 years of research, in French in 2023 and in English in 2024. So in Greece, since the antiquity, we have the Hellenized Jews, the Romaniots. Romaniots, the word is Romios. Romios, it means Greek. Romaniots are the Greek Jews settled in Greece during the antiquity, after the destruction of the first temple, during the Hellenistic period, the period of Alexander the Great, 4th century before Common Era. They settled in Greece gradually during the antiquity. The name of these Jews are the Romaniots. The Romaniots arrived in Greece and melded Greek and Jewish elements, as they still do today, for example, in Athens. Our rabbi in Athens is Romaniot, Gabriel Negrin. So they spoke a Greek dialect known as Yevanic, the Judeo-Greek, and chanted prayers in Greek and in Hebrew, as they still do today.
Which was it was really, I'm trying to think of the word, but it wasn't something normal at the time. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
for sure. Can I
of course.
stop you for a moment though? You said
Mm.
Romeos is Greek, not
It's
Roman?
Greek. No, during the Roman Empire, Romios, it was the Greek people.
Okay. Thank you.
And today, sometimes we use this term between us, the Greeks. We don't say the Greeks. We say we are Romios.
Even non-Jews, even.
Even today, yeah, yeah. Not all the Greeks, the Greek-speaking people.
Interesting.
And it comes from the Roman Empire.
Okay.
So after the Romanots, we have in Greece the Ashkenazi Jews. Between the 11th and the 13th centuries, mainly during the Crusades, Ashkenazi Jews, especially from Hungary and Transylvania, the Central Europe, fleeing the massacres, they settled in the country. After that third wave of immigration, we have the Sephardic Jews fleeing the expulsion of Spain and Portugal at the end of the 15th century. They arrived to Greece, the Sephardic Jews, the majority. Until today, the majority of the Jews are Sephardic in Greece. So they arrived at the end of the 15th century. They merged with Balkan, Oriental, and Spanish tradition. They spoke Ladino, the Judeo-Espanol, as they still do today in Greece. And finally, the fourth wave of Jews arrived in Greece. It's in the 16th century, Jews from Italy. The Jews from Italy, some Jews from Italy, settled in Greece, which at the time was under Ottoman occupation. So in Greece, we have four big communities: the Romanots, the Ashkenazis, the Sephardic, and the Jews of Italy. So the Hellenic Judaism is very diverse and very dynamic before the Second World War. But the majority of the Jews of Greece are Sephardic until today.
Okay. And then we're talking about a thriving community and beautiful things coming out of there and in there, and just a really rich community. And before we get into World War II, I want to go to World War I first, because that affected the region as well. Um, and you talk about it, the effects of both world wars, but you say that in the First World War, the Jews of Thessaloniki even profited a little bit. Can you give us a little insight into World War I in Greece?
Yes, what is the context? Greece experienced many tensions between the beginning of the 20th century and the beginning of the World War II. Starting, for example, with the Balkan Wars. The Balkan Wars are the wars around here, the Balkans and Ottoman Empire, Turkey. So, for example, Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913, the Greeks reclaimed Macedonia. Macedonia is the region of Thessaloniki, Greek Macedonia, the north of our country. They took from the Turks this region, and the capital was Thessaloniki after 500 years of Ottoman occupation. This is important. Why? Because the Jewish community was not viewed favorably by the Greeks, by the Christians. Why? Because the Jews held a significant portion of the economy and had collaborated during 500 years with the Ottoman occupation and with the Turks. So tensions were high between Christians in Thessaloniki and Jews. And the problem is that the Jews are collaborators, firstly, and secondly, the Jews are the murderers of Jesus.
Right.
So World War I had a little impact in Greece because the country entered the war in 1917, just 1 year. However, In the same year, there was a great fire in Thessaloniki, destroyed a big part of the city, especially the Jewish community. But also during the Second World War, the presence of French and British military forces in Thessaloniki did benefit for the local economy, especially the Jews, because they bought a lot of products from the Jewish community, the forces. But after the fire, about 60% of the city was destroyed, especially Jewish community, because 40% of the population was Jewish before the Second World War, between 30 and 40%. So after the fire, nothing was ever the same. And after that came 1922 and the catastrophe of Smyrna, during which 1 million Greeks were expelled by the Turks from Asia Minor. So they arrived to Greece, and all that created tensions between the Greeks from Turkey, the Greeks, Christians from Greece, and the Jews. So anti-Semitism and societal strain drove many Jews to emigrate to France, to the United States, and to Palestine, because in Greece, the Zionist movement during the interwar period was very important, because here in Greece, we are not very far from Israel.
Right.
And for example, the Zionist movement took Dockers from Thessaloniki, and the Dockers from Thessaloniki settled to Palestine, and they created the port of Haifa. The port of Haifa was created by the Dockers from Thessaloniki, from Greece. In the beginning of the 20th century, in Greece, we have around approximately 100,000 Jews, 1 or 2% of the Greek population. Before the Second World War, we have approximately 75,000 Jews. During the Second World War, before the deportation, 13,000 Jews fought in the Greek army, and 1,500 Jews lost their lives on the Albanian front against the Mussolini's fascist troops. They fought for their country, and they lost their lives. And those who returned from the front were mostly deported to the death camps in 1943 and 1944, even though they had fought for their country. And after the Second World War, we will analyze that. We will see that around 90% of the Jewish community was gone.
Right. So let's get into that a little bit. It's just incredible. You're talking about 40% of Thessaloniki, and then a handful today. A little more. But so let's
Yes, at the beginning of the 20th century, it's about 30%. On the eve of the Second World War, it's about 30%. It's important. Thessaloniki was nicknamed the Jerusalem of the Balkans.
Right. And even the ports were closed on Saturdays, right?
Sabbath, yeah. On Sabbath, yes.
So, okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Holocaust now. You got into it a little bit. Let's talk about, actually, let's do it a little bit differently. Let's talk about different cities in Greece, and I'm going to name it. You give us short 2-3 sentences. What's important to know about these different cities? How's that?
Let's do the
Something
job.
different. I've never done this before, just letting you know. So cities that people may not be familiar with, cities they may be. Let's just try a few of them. How about Arta?
Arta, in the center of Greece. Arta, Jewish presence since Middle Ages. After the 15th century, you have in Arta Romanian Jews, Sephardic Jews, and also Jews from Italy, especially Apulia, Sicily, Calabria, and Sardinia. And before the Second World War, in Arta, we have about 400 Jews.
Okay. Sparta.
Sparta, the big Sparta. We all know about Sparta because this town has a big history.
Ancient history.
Ancient history, yes, of course, of
Yeah.
course. Sparta, a very dynamic city. We have a Jewish community during the antiquity in Sparta, because Sparta is a very important economic center and political center for us in Greece. But during Middle Ages, due to Christianization campaigns by the church, the Jews left the town and the community disappeared gradually. I mean, before the Second World War, we don't have a community in Sparta, even one Jew.
About Yanina, which we know has a wonderful synagogue in New York as well, and the Spartak brothers are
Yeah,
there.
Ioannina. My heart belongs to Ioannina. Ioannina, the capital of the Romagnol Jews.
Yes.
The community of Ioannina was a vibrant, ancient community. Some emigrated to the United States at the beginning of the 20th century before the Holocaust and founded communities and synagogues like in New York. And the synagogue of New York, the Greek synagogue of New York, the name is Kahal Kadosh Yanina.
Yep.
So Yanina, one of the oldest Jewish communities in Europe. About 20 Jews today. It's a very small community. There is no rabbi, for example. But from 2019 to 2022, the mayor of Ioannina was Jewish, Moises Elisaf. And he helped me a lot to realize this book, Moises, because he was a mayor, he was a doctor, and he was a very big researcher for us. So Ioannina, it's a big history, a very important history.
Okay, we'll do three more. How about Corfu?
Corfu, Kerkyra Island, Ionian Sea. Ionian Sea, it's the west of Greece. Fascinating history. You have between 16th century and the beginning of the 20th century, in Corfu, you have two communities, the Grecos, the Romagnots, and the Pugliesi, the Jews from Apulia in Italy. Two communities, two synagogues.
Only two. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's
Crete?
a small island. Crete, a Jewish presence since antiquity also. Romagnots and Sephardic Jews lived in three cities: Heraklion, the biggest city here in Crete today, Heraklion, Rethymnon, and the biggest Jewish community was Chania, west of Crete. Unfortunately, this old community perished in June 1944 when their deportation ship was torpedoed in the Aegean Sea near Santorini. And all the history of the Jews of Crete disappeared in the depth of the Aegean Sea.
So we're going to have to do another one. Chios?
Chios, yes. The east of Greece, near the Turkish coast. Also an ancient community oriented towards trade. After the 1822 massacre of Greeks by the Turks and rising tensions, the Jewish community, the old Jewish community since antiquity also, gradually left for Rhodes, another island, Thessaloniki, the Jerusalem of the Balkans, and also Turkey. So before the Second World War, we don't have Jewish community in Chios. They gradually disappeared.
Thank you. That's end of our lightning round. Let's go a little bit more in depth into something because I want to focus a little bit on Larissa because you mentioned Larissa, sorry, and you
Mm.
mentioned something curious to me. You say that the Jewish-born Prussian diplomat Jacob Salomon Bartholdi in the early 19th century visited Greece and spoke about the color-coded dress of each ethnic group that was living there, that the Jews were forced to wear light blue turbans and light blue shoes. Larissa seems to have this unique history, so I'm going to ask you to expand upon Larissa a little bit.
Mhm. Larissa, the center of Greece, the
Larissa.
region is Thessaly. Larissa, we say in Greece, it's a
Thank you.
big town until
Larissa.
today. We have a small story. We say, Larissa, Seida que lachtarissa. Larissa, I saw you and I miss you.
Ah, nice.
So, Larissa, during the Ottoman Empire, between the 15th century and the 19th century, each religious community in the whole Ottoman Empire had to wear a distinctive cloth or a distinctive symbol. It's not especially for Larissa. For example, a light blue black turban. Each ethnic group during the Ottoman occupation has its own colors and its own symbols. For example, sometimes Christians had to wear a belt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was
So
it a
we
specific
have this
color belt
situation.
or?
Yeah, for example, for Jews, it depends on the century. For Jews, it was the hat or blue or sometimes yellow.
Right. But the Christian belt was any color or?
Sometimes black or sometimes red. It
Interesting.
depends on the period. It depends on the region. It depends on the city. But in a general way, each religious community had its own symbol, and the Turks organized each religious community in a special way, and each religious community, the name is Milliyet. Milliyet in Turk means religious community. Milliyet for the Jews, Milliyet for the Christians. A rule for each community.
So it's not singling out necessarily the Jews.
No, it's for all religious group except the Muslims, because the Muslims don't
Right.
have to wear a symbol.
Right. So let's get into, we said we're going up to the Holocaust. Now we're going to go a little post-Holocaust. And you mentioned that there are 9 official Jewish communities in Greece today, some of them as little as 20 people or maybe even less.
Mm-hmm.
And can you give us a little bit about Jewish life today in Greece? I know for people who have to read the book to really understand more, but if you can just give us a hint.
Today in Greece, you have approximately 5,000 Jews.
Total.
9 in total, yes. 9 communities. Before the Second World War, more than 30 communities. Today we have 9 communities. But only 3 communities have a rabbi. Apart from the communities of Athens, the biggest community,
Yeah.
Thessaloniki, the second one, and Larissa, the third one, the other Jewish communities have between 30 and 50 members, no rabbis, and mostly function for holiday, or synagogues function for holidays or special ceremonies. But each community maintain ties with local authorities. We don't have rabbis, but we have a chief in each community. So they also mainly survive, these small communities, also survive thanks to private fundings from Greece and from abroad. And they are trying to survive thanks to the visitors coming from abroad, such as, for example, the Jewish community of Rhodes. We have a lot of Israelis, for example, in Greece. We have a lot of American Jews here in Greece. So they give money to these communities to survive. They don't have any choice.
And they have...
I mean, we have three active communities: Athens, Thessaloniki, and Larissa.
And the others have some type of a memorial or museum or something where people...
Yes, we have in all Greek cities, more than 30, we have memorials.
To the Holocaust.
To the Holocaust, yes. Synagogues, in these 9 communities, we have also synagogues. But rabbis only for 3 synagogues, for 3 communities.
Okay, so let's go a little bit into what you talk about in the book, Judeophobia in Greece. I think we have to deal with it in today's day and age. You say Judeophobia and anti-Zionism, and as an example, I'm just going to bring up an example you brought up. I'm going to say it wrong though. Kefalonia, is that right?
Kefalonia, yes.
Kefalonia, which after the 1953 7.2 magnitude earthquake, Israel sent aid workers to the island who worked to rescue inhabitants. So we have this connection, and then you still talk about the anti-Zionism that is there. So today, what do you see as the attitude in Greece? I know it's a very stereotypical question, but give us an insight a little bit, please.
It's very important to analyze that. It's not easy. It's a thorny issue.
Yes.
In my book, I also try to explain not only the history, but also the current situation in Greece.
Yes.
And I tried to analyze the Greek anti-Semitism, or rather Greek Judeophobia. I use the term Judeophobia because Judeophobia combines anti-Semitism, hatred against the Jews, Jewish people, anti-Zionism, hatred against Israel, and anti-Judaism, hatred against the Jewish religion. This is Judeophobia. The last point, the anti-Judaism, according to my opinion, is the most important. Contrary to the Catholic Church, the Greek and the Russian Orthodox Church still consider the Jews as the murderers of Jesus. This is anti-Judaism. Greece never experienced, however, pogroms or mass massacres. Right. We don't have this here, like in Russia or in Poland. Before the Second World War, there were very few acts of violence against the Jews in Greece. The Greek anti-Semitism or Judeophobia, up to this day, it's not violent and has nothing to do with anti-Semitism in other countries like France or United Kingdom or the United States. Anti-Semitism in Greece is very superficial. I mean, I use the term coffee stereotypes. You know, in Greece, we love go to coffees, to cafeterias and talk about everything and anything. So you might hear in casual conversation statements, Greeks rule the world. Jews rule the world, or okay. Jews killed Jesus. But it's based on ignorance. Also today, the links with Israel are very strong. Our government is a big ally in Israel. And despite the war in the Middle East and the rise of anti-Semitism worldwide, there is no increase of in anti-Semitic acts in Greece. Firstly, because we don't know who is Jew in Greece, because the Jewish community is not so religious, so they don't wear kippah, for example. So we don't know who is Jew and who is not. We don't have a big Muslim community. Sometimes the Muslim community is a vector of anti-Semitism. We have a very small Muslim community in Greece. Unfortunately, and however, we have a pro-Palestinian and very active far-left movement in Greece. So today, the anti-Zionism is more and more important. because of the war. So it remains non-violent, but the far left movement is very active both on social media and on the ground. So, for example, in the center of Athens now we have a lot of graffiti, anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic graffiti around Athens in the center. And other cities are affected too. A lot of graffitis around Greece against the Jews, not against Israel. So it's very sad, and we fight against that. And unfortunately, the mayor of Athens is quite pro-Palestinian, so he lets it happen. It doesn't even take the time to remove these horrible messages, these horrible graffitis. So yes, the anti-Zionism here in Greece today is important, but I think that Judeophobia, anti-Judaism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Zionism is not violent. It's not so important. It's very theoretical and very superficial.
Okay,
I
thank you.
tried to give a right image to this difficult situation.
Yeah, it's important. And like we said, you expand upon it in the book as well. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about this for a long time, unfortunately. So your book puts today's cities in the context of history. And so I think I want to share one thing that I want to walk away with from your book, and then I'm going to let you tell me what you think people should walk away with from your book. So while I'm talking, you can think. As I want to share the last sentence of your book where you quote from the French politician and Shoah survivor Simon Weil. And he said, "To live, a people must always be able to know its past, to judge it, to accept it." I think that's just brilliant. And I think you really put it out there in the book. Is there something you want to make sure people walk away with from your book?
Firstly, about Simone Weil. Simone Weil in France is very important for France and for Europe also. She was a European deputy and European president in the parliament. It is vital, I think, today for people, for all of us, to know our history.
Yeah.
It's very important. Because if we forget, if we deny, if we rewrite the history, I think it's very dangerous, because maybe we can experience, we can live another Holocaust or another bad event like the Holocaust. If we don't know our history, I mean that the ignorance will win. And the Nazism, for example, was based, and all the fascism, all the anti-Semitic regimes were based on ignorance. We have to know our history, not only the Jews. You know, in Greece, for example, when I was young, we didn't know anything about the Holocaust in Greece. We are Greeks, and we don't know our history. It was not a part of the school curriculum, the Holocaust and the history of the Jews of Greece. Now it is, but when I was young, I'm 40 years old. When I was young, there was nothing about the history of the Jews of Greece. And the Jews of Greece are a part of the Greek history. Until until today, the history started during the antiquity.
Right. And that's what's so incredible about it. I mean, people are just starting to talk about Saloniki and the destruction that's there. So I really appreciate this book, and thank you for bringing it to light. The good, the ancient ties, as well as the decimation almost, and the modern. So thank you very much for that. And there's always more to discuss, but I encourage everybody to read the book. But
just one thing, because it's important.
Yes, please.
About the Holocaust, about 65,000 Jews disappeared, have been deported. 65,000 Jews, it means around 85 or 90% of the Greek Jewish community. It's one of the most important percentages in Europe after Hungary, Poland, and Lithuania.
Right. And they were mostly Sephardi Jews, which is also very unique.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So thank you. And like I said, please do go back and read because there is so much more there. Um, we always at the New Books Network have to ask, what are you working on now? So, what is your next project? What can we look forward to?
My next project. So, as I said, I'm a historian, author, and also columnist. So, uh, I have a lot of work because the current situation is very difficult. But I would like to write something, maybe a book, a history book, or a novel, history novel, about my mother's roots, the Jews from Tunisia.
Interesting.
So I think that in the near future, I will focus on that part of history because it's also my own.
I love it. Thank you. Well, I'm really excited to actually, we'll speak about that in private too. I look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you all for listening. We've been speaking with Anastasios Karababas and his about his book In the Footsteps of the Jews of Greece from Ancient Times to the Present Day, translated by Lena M. Liederman, published by Valentine Mitchell in 2024. It has really been a true pleasure. Thank you. And
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
to continue exploring the diversity of the Jewish people, follow Jewish Unity Through Diversity Institute on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and our podcast, Reclaiming Identity.